When the world froze under the grip of war, survival meant more than just bravery. In the brutal winters of occupied Europe, supplies were gone. Wood was frozen solid, and whatever fuel remained was confiscated for the front lines. People didn't just battle the cold, they battled extinction. Entire villages in Eastern Europe, from the Carpathian Mountains to the plains of Belarus, faced temperatures that turned wells to ice and bread to stone. Yet, some of them survived. Not because of luck, but because of the ground beneath their feet. They rediscovered something ancient, a forgotten technology known as the underground heat cell. This wasn't a machine or a furnace or anything built of metal. It was an idea, as old as the earth itself. A method of trapping and storing warmth beneath the soil, allowing people to live through winters that should have killed them. Long before the war, rural builders knew how to use the insulating power of clay and earth. Peasant homes in Ukraine, Poland, and the Baltics had thick floors of packed soil that stayed cool in summer and warm in winter. But when war came and resources vanished, this ancient wisdom was reborn under desperate, freezing conditions. Refugees, villagers, and partisans began digging small chambers beneath their huts. They learned that if you built a fire in a shallow pit lined with stone and clay, then sealed it, the trapped heat could warm the ground above for days. These were called heat cells, a simple principle of physics turned into a life-saving survival tool. Even when temperatures dropped below -25 degrees Celsius, these shelters stayed habitable. For people cut off from all supply lines, this was nothing short of a miracle. What those villagers did not realize was that they had built passive thermal batteries, primitive versions of what modern engineers now call thermal mass heating. Stone, clay, and soil absorb heat energy slowly and release it just as slowly. It's nature's version of a time-release heater. Light a fire once, and the earth becomes a slow-burning furnace that radiates warmth upward for hours, even days. One survivor from near Lviv later recalled, "We made the fire once, sealed the pit, and for 3 nights the floor stayed warm. We thought it was God's mercy. It was just good clay." The construction was ingenious in its simplicity. First, a pit about half a meter deep was dug beneath the home or shelter. The base was lined with stones or compacted earth to act as the thermal core. For several hours, a small fire was burned inside, not to heat the air, but to charge the stones. Once the fire died down, the ashes were cleared, and the pit was sealed with a thick clay or brick layer. This lid trapped the heat inside. As night fell, that stored warmth slowly radiated upward through the floor, turning a freezing hut into a livable refuge. In advanced versions, villagers even dug narrow air tunnels, natural convection systems that pulled in cold air on one side and released warm air from the other. No smoke, no fire risk, just physics, done with bare hands. Historical records from wartime archives mention dozens of variations. In rural Latvia, partisan fighters built dual-level bunkers, fire pit below, sleeping space above. Once heated, the cell beneath stayed warm for 2 or 3 nights. Soviet engineers studying these shelters later noted they used 70% less firewood than normal stoves. In Belarus, villagers called them Teplia Zemlia, the warm earth. And in Poland's forested regions, underground barns were equipped with ciepłe jamy, warm hollows that protected both families and livestock. Some used river stones for better heat storage. Others added layers of straw and soil for insulation. Every village had its own version, all based on the same timeless principle. So, why did it work so well? Because the earth is nature's perfect insulator. Above ground, a fire loses most of its energy to the air. convection carries it away. But underground, there's nowhere for the heat to escape. Clay and soil trap energy like a slow heartbeat underfoot. The deeper layers stay warm, while the surface releases just enough heat to keep the shelter livable. It's the same science behind modern masonry heaters, rocket stoves, and geothermal systems, except these villagers discovered it without ever seeing a blueprint. If you wanted to recreate a heat cell today, the principle remains the same. You'd dig a pit about a meter deep beneath your shelter, line it with stones or bricks, and light a fire for several hours. Once the stones are fully heated, remove the embers, cover the pit with a thick clay seal, and add soil or straw insulation above. Within hours, your floor begins to radiate warmth. For larger setups, you can connect multiple heat cells through clay tunnels, cycling them so that one is always charging while the others release stored heat. It's efficient, silent, and requires no electricity, a design that belongs as much in a modern off-grid home as it did in a wartime bunker. The underground heat cell wasn't only about human comfort. It saved livestock, protected food stores, and kept underground crops from freezing. Some farmers built miniature versions beneath pens or root cellars. Others used the technique to dry clothes and preserve grains. In regions where the winter sun barely rose above the horizon, these cells became the difference between starvation and endurance. It's astonishing that such a simple technique, fire, clay, and patience, could outsmart one of nature's harshest enemies. Today, sustainable architects are quietly reviving this forgotten science. By embedding heat cells into foundations or greenhouse floors, they can stabilize indoor temperatures naturally and reduce energy use by over half. In a world facing fuel shortages, climate extremes, and unreliable infrastructure, this knowledge isn't just nostalgic. It's necessary, because sometimes the best solutions don't come from machines. They come from memory. The underground heat cell stands as proof of what human ingenuity can do under pressure. It's a story carved into the frozen soil of Eastern Europe, a story of people who turned the earth itself into a source of life. They taught us that survival doesn't always depend on progress. Sometimes it depends on remembering what our ancestors already knew. And that's why we tell these stories, to keep them alive. Because one day, the warmth they discovered in the darkest winter might be the same warmth that saves us again. This is Echoes of Valor, preserving the forgotten science of survival. Thanks for watching. If you found this story of ingenuity inspiring, please hit the like button and subscribe for more forgotten history. See you next time.